Hello there. ¿Cómo estás? Konnichiwa. Bon voyage. Much love to you. This is not a tello video if we're not doing some fishing. I know I'm showing the screen right here because we're going to start talking about some forum posts. However, though, it's not a tello video if we're not going to be doing some fishing later on Tello's stream, Twitch TV, Crusader Strike. You know the damn deal. Much love to you. And if you don't know about the fishing events, check it out here. Let's just say our times are lit, so settle down, I'll kiss you. But back to the portion of the video that I want to talk about, and sorry guys, I'm itching my nose a lot today. My allergies are all-time high. Allergy season around the spring fucks your boy up. If you know about it, leave the comments below. Recommend me some allergy pills. I don't know if it's Allegra, I took that already, Zyrtec D, whatever. I'm trying, alright? We're going to talk about some very interesting things today because at the current moment, there is a big discussion on the forum posts about Scarlet Enclave. Now, it's been a couple weeks, right? I think it's been, 2 weeks now? We're leading into our third week with this reset coming Tuesday. And people are pretty much on both ends. It's like 50-50 on how they feel. You know, you have one group of people that feel like that this raid is just really too hard. They need to gut it. They need to nerf it completely and allow people to just, stomp the raid out. That's how one group of people feel. And then you have another group that people feel where they don't want the raid gutted. They want some tuning, but do not destroy these bosses to the point where it is just an easy, stampede of just tier. And now there's no more content at the end of it. Because at the end of the day, guys, whether you guys like to accept this or not, this raid is the final raid that we are getting from Season of Discovery. This is like their final, voyage of like SOD, their culmination point of what they even said, and this is the last piece of raid content that we'll get. Now, if we get other drip pieces of content, maybe a potential new dungeon, or maybe, some type of PvP update, or whatever it is, class balances, 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, all the way up to 5. That's what we'll get. But more than likely, this is it because they're bringing the team and all these other people, especially in Blizzard, to work on other versions of WoW. Like, they have Mr. Pandaria in the summer, and I know Legion Remix is going to be happening, and just other versions of World of Warcraft all the way up to their point into BlizzCon, right? And they're working on an anniversary and then TBC release, right? So this raid is very important to us as SOD players because we want to enjoy the longevity of this, even if this is like 3-4 months of content, right? Because that's what it does provide, regardless of you bringing in alts. But back to the point here. This raid, should it be gutted? Should it be, maintain its integrity of, being somewhat difficult, somewhat challenging? Personally, I lean towards the side of it remaining to have its integrity, of those last 3 bosses being tough, but at the same time, I do agree that the enrage timers need to be increased. If they want to do small tweaks to maybe abilities that they feel like is just too little overtuned for, especially 20-man groups, because I think 20-mans are struggling more than anything when it was intended for 20, and now, people are just bringing 40, right? And people are still struggling on 40 as well. But for the most part, I think, honestly, they can look at that, and I wouldn't be upset about that as long as the bosses don't feel like they are just completely pushovers. Now we're just walking on some, rug mats. I want to see some type of challenge because I personally, as a player, at least this is just for me. This has nothing to do, with you guys as well, but just for me, I like to see challenge. And if you guys like to see challenge, leave that in the comments below that you like to see challenge as well, because at the end of the day, I think that's good for even in the future of Classic Plus, that new content comes and it presents fun, hard, but acquirable challenge that you can actually overcome. You know what I mean? Like that you can get over this mountain, and it's not this impossible feat that you can not ever obtain. So I think that's actually enjoyable, and I like that stuff. It's the reason why I like those games, like Souls-like games and Elden Ring and stuff like that, because even though the challenge seems hard or daunting, it's still obtainable, and you could still overcome it. So even with the Scarlet Enclave, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys, as a player who's played the War Within as well and played the first season, doing Nubar's Palace and Mythic Dungeon and Keys was harder than any of the Scarlet Enclave stuff I have seen. Scarlet Enclave is quite difficult, don't get me wrong, but doing content over there for me personally was much harder than doing content in just this raid alone. Is it hard? Yes. Do you have to pay attention to mechanics? Yes. But if we can overcome these mechanics and people are still clearing this raid, there are logs out there already of people clearing this raid, then that means it's acquirable, and I don't think that's a bad thing. But let's read this post here first from Focus Up, and then we'll read the second post, because the reason why I have two forum posts here is because they're both on one side of the spectrum that maybe some of you guys in the comments below might find yourself on. And then there's another side of the spectrum that you might find yourself on. So I'm very curious, and do know this is just me giving opinions. I'm not mad at anybody or anything like that. I just want to, have some good discussion that we can have in the comments below. So from Focus Up, I run 2-man raids. Thursday 6-8 or 6 out of 8, and Sunday an 8 out of 8. I also run 5 pug runs randomly for fun, all 5+. I already had 30 to 50+ people quit their guilds to join ours. I think it's sad, honestly. I try to convince people to stay in their guild, but when a majority of players is going 1 out of 8 or 2 out of 8, why would you stay when pugs are going for 5 or 7 out of 8? 2 of my pug runs this weekend went 7 out of 8. They need more nerfs, or I only see more guilds falling apart is what they're saying, and more people quitting. Either that, or they need more loot drops off the first 5 bosses. 2 lockouts is enough. Make this raid more realistic for 20-mans. I do think he has, or this person, he or she has a great point. 20-mans being more realistic. 20-mans are struggling a lot. Only a couple guilds have completed 20-mans, and it's like really on point with the most super optimized groups, that being just like, Boomies, Afflict Lock, Shadow Priest, right, and Mages. And I do understand what they're saying with more loot drops off the first 5 bosses, but then if you do that, you create a double-edged dagger where now too much loot is dropping, and then it goes against the Chalice, the weekly system that we have in New Avalon. It goes right against that. So it's a reason why they, I think they brought it down from like 2 to 1, how many chalice fragments you get. But I don't think they should do more loot. I think they should look at the filler loot and tweak those pieces so they can be optimal pieces as well. Maybe look at those specific stats on the filler loot within the raid that people are not really looking at so much, unless they need to replace or replace a 3 out of 2 set gear bonus. Maybe they have like 3-piece judgment or 3-piece this, and they just only want a 2-piece, and they use that one filler piece. Sorry if I'm stuttering, chat. It's, or amigos, it's not a tele video if I don't stutter. But regardless, yeah, I think too much loot would be a problem. I understand making it more realistic for 20-man, so tuning I can understand, as long as it doesn't tune the bosses to the point where it is just completely guttable and it's no longer something that is requiring 40 players to bring, or 30 players, and now you can just bring 20 and that's it, you're good to go. Either way, I am looking towards what they would do in the future for Scarlet Enclave. I understand where they're coming from. If you side with this individual in the comments below, tell me why you agree. You could say I agree with Focus and make your point. Let me know in the comments below. Just say I agree with Focus, make your point, and I'll read it. For number 2, though, we're going to go over to the next forum post. Now for Enhance My Pants. So this is a funny shaman name. The idea that the Scarlet Enclave is too difficult and must be nerfed immediately ignores the actual progression numbers and the way challenging raids are supposed to function. Looking at the data, it's clear that guilds are progressing through the raid, just at different rates, which is exactly what you expect in the first 2 weeks of progression. Progression data shows steady completion, so this guy is showing numbers. 100 guilds have reached 6 out of 8 in the 20-man bracket. 50 guilds have already cleared the final bosses in the 40-man bracket. One of my boys, OGB, has actually cleared it 2 weeks in a row, I believe, at this point. And sorry for the train in the back. We got a train around here. 209 guilds are actively working on the Scarlet Enclave in the 20-man bracket, and 234 guilds are progressive in the 40-man bracket. While only 6 guilds have completed it with a full 20-man, that's only normal early progression, and hard fights take time to refine, and smaller rosters have fewer resources to compensate for mistakes. These numbers prove that guilds are progressing despite the challenge. If the raid were truly impossible, we wouldn't see a large percentage of guilds steadily moving forward. Progression versus a stone wall, now he talks about. The biggest argument for nerfing Scarlet Enclave is that some of the guilds are struggling with the enraged timers despite playing well. But difficulty doesn't mean the fight is broken, it means it's working as designed, encouraging players to improve their execution, acquiring gear, and refine the strategy over time. Season of Discovery is built on the idea of long-term challenge and progression, not instant clears. If every guild can down every boss with ease the first couple weeks, what would be the point of progressive raid structure? And I 100% understand that, because at the end of the day, I believe that the more and more we acquire this gear, especially according to Agron's post, we could see it close to a 40 to 65% DPS increase by the end of getting getting all our Scarlet pieces, even if you just get a 2-piece alone, I believe that's like a 25% to 30% increase in DPS for some classes. So I believe the more and more we keep clearing these first couple bosses, the more and more damage and output we are going to be providing better. The better we talk with our guilds and executing strategies is going to be better for completing raids, and also, like he says, refining our strategies and the metas that we adopt over the next couple weeks on how to approach each and every single boss. And it's a reason why we don't see like full guides on, you know, Wowhead right now on how to approach this raid, because it is a very hard raid and many more ways of coming up with different strategies are being approached as we continue going through the weeks to find a definitive strategy, right? A definitive discussion on how to handle this, you know, this whole situation, how to handle everything. And if you can even look here, I put a video up real quick and we'll go back to the post, but I'm here with my guildies. We're just talking about strategies. We're talking about council fight. We're talking about abilities that we have to make sure to pay attention to, looking at the damage that we take in from these abilities, especially during, you know, the council fight, which is a hard fight. It's a stopping point for a lot of guilds. And, you know, it was a new fight to us as well. And we're looking to progress through this further so we can eventually get to Lillian and we can eventually get to Calderon. But I even made a chart last night, or actually today technically I made it, where I was talking about how we could position the fight with, you know, Doan and Visha and Herod, and, you know, have them moving around the room with the tanks and making sure Doan is completely isolated. So we're, you know, progressing, and that's what a lot of guilds should be doing right now, because that is like staying in touch with the game. And I think Blizzard wants that, is a sense of us being a community again and talking with each other again and having that sense of progression and being excited to tackle new strategies and try different ideas and come up with our concepts of like how we're going to, you know, learn a new meta of approaching the Scarlet Enclave. I think this is a good thing and it's healthy for the game. That's what an MMO is all about. Now, to continue what he was saying, he says guild mergers and adaptation is normal. Another argument being used is that some guilds need to merge or recruit stronger players to keep progressing. But this is a normal part of MMORPG's raiding culture. Some guilds naturally adjust, recruit, or restructure as the difficulty increases. This doesn't mean that the content is broken. It means it's actually forcing guilds to grow, collaborate, and improve, which is exactly the point of high-level raiding. And I get that. I think that at the end of the day, I don't want to say that this Scarlet Enclave is some sort of like retail high level raid, because it's nowhere close to even AQ Palace and War Within. It's nowhere close to the Undermine raid whatsoever in the War Within, but it is a hard raid. It's probably the hardest raid we have ever seen in Classic. By far, it is harder than any other raid that we have experienced. But you got to remember, even back in the early days of the earlier phases, BFD for Kelris was a nightmare for casters. Nomergon Thermoplug was a nightmare for melee during phase 2. Going into phase 3, Aranicus was completely busted and guilds were like not completing this, and they were getting hard stuck towards Aranicus, and then they gutted the hell out of that raid. So those were the only times we really had severe, serious challenge besides like Black Mode and BWL, right? Even then, this is the first legitimate raid where like, this is tough. This is hard. And for me, I kind of like that, because it gives a new way for us to improve on how we tackle things each week. And for some people, they don't like that because they're used to, you know, the dad mentality of just saying, I like to go left, right, click 1 or 2 macros, and that's it, I do all my damage. There's nothing wrong if you like that, but at the end of the day, you can't always adopt that even going into Classic Plus when new content is going to come out, because no matter what, when new content comes out, you're always going to say, oh, this is just too hard, this is too overbearing, day one of it. There are people out there that will literally complain day one of something, and then 1,000 people will follow because they all believe it's super, super hard, when in reality, you just have to find the meta, you just have to find what you could do better. Some tuning might be done, which is totally fine, and I'm not against tuning, but to completely gut something is something I am against of, and I don't believe in that, because it's not healthy for new content coming out in the future. And just because something is super investing of your time, and you know, you have to actually put some thought and discussions with your friends and talk about strats and stuff of that nature, doesn't mean it's not worth the challenge and worth overcoming and worth pushing through. I think that's the whole meaning of prog, and something we've lost for a long time now. We have lost the idea of what it was like to prog, because we're just blasting through this. And I think it needs this meaning of prog right now, because like I said, this is the last raid we are getting. So back to what the person was saying. Conclusion, the raid is tough, but it's working as intended. Scarlet Enclave is hard, but far from impossible. Guilds are actively progressing, kills are happening, and the challenge aligns with Blizzard's stated raid design philosophy. Calling for a nerf just because some groups struggle early on would undermine the entire point of the progressive based raiding. Instead of demanding nerfs, the focus should be on adaptation, execution improvements, and gearing up, which is exactly how tough raids have always worked. Scarlet Enclave does not need a nerf, it needs more time for guilds to rise to the challenge. And I get what he's saying. I actually really do like this post, because honestly, more people need to rise to the challenge. The more gear that they get, the more metas that they form, the more progging and studying of these fights that they do, positioning, focusing on mechanics, and going from there can complete these raids. Now, with the enraged timer, the one thing I will say against this person here is I do think the enraged timer can be increased without it actually gutting the raid. It wouldn't harm the raid whatsoever. It would give more people time to just execute mechanics better, but that's all they need to do. They don't need to nerf the damage from Garou of Visha. They don't need to nerf the Divine Strikes from Herod or whoever, or if Doan drops those. They don't need to nerf the Blast Wave damage that Doan does, or whatever, you know, the Fireball damage. They don't need to nerf any of these specific abilities, is what I'm getting at from Council Fight. They don't need to nerf the damage from Liliana Voss or nerf the damage from Calderon. They don't need to nerf any of this stuff because people are completing it. There are completions happening. What they do need to nerf, in my opinion, is the enrage timer, and they need to adjust it. So you can call that a nerf if you wish to call that that. It needs an adjustment because it gives more time for people to properly execute mechanics with confidence. So that is where I stand personally. I believe that is the best way of going about it, is handling it at that point. Now, in another couple weeks to a month, if we still see genuine situations where people are having a super hard time for some reason clearing this raid, even though at that point you should be getting 2-piece from your weeklies, 3-piece, almost 4-piece, maybe even pieces from raid that you might have got from the first 5 bosses, then let's have the conversation again. But as of right now, I think we need to have some more time with this and go from there, and then see what happens until then. Then we can come up with some better data and further clarification, and maybe even, you know, come back to this video and I'll talk about how I did a video, you know, on this day, and revisit this in a month time frame in May, because I think that's the best way of going about it. But that's basically the video, guys. And nothing else too crazy. My allergies are really bothering me right now, but I still wanted to do this video for you guys. So much love to you. I hope everyone's having a, you know, a blessed and beautiful day. And let me know what your comments are, you know, below. Do you side with Enhance My Pants? So if you side with, you know, Enhance My Pants, if you side with him, just leave your post on why you agree with him. If you side with Focus Up, the other person, leave your post on why you agree with them. And let's give some data to the devs with this video. Let's see how they react to the comments here, because I know they watch, and then we'll go from there. So much love, amigos. Keep on keeping on, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Oh, dude, my ass is packed up, bro. Hold on, we need some Poland Springs. Editor, I'm gonna need you to give me a bottle of a lager. We're gonna down that bitch in one sitting. Settle down.